Pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, which is going to be all about compliance. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Jackie Sherlock and I'm the product marketing manager at Mercury. You've probably seen my face on a few videos and things like that before. Now, I know that compliance can be a tricky thing to get your head around, and I don't for a second claim to be an expert about it. But luckily, I have the very knowledgeable Michelle O'Hare here with me today, and she knows more than me. We've got a lot to go through today, so I'm going to hand straight over to Michelle in just 1 second. But as we go through the talk today, if you have any questions, please use either the chat functionality or the Q&A functionality, and we've got the lovely Emily German here who will coordinate them and we'll go over them at the end. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Michelle.
Hiya folks, so let me share my screen. We're going to jump in quite quickly so we've got a lot to get through today. But yeah, welcome to the session. Like Jackie says, really happy to be on it today. Our compliance module and the things mapped out to compliance, you'll see are really comprehensive in Mercury. So we really want to make sure you're making the most of those today. So we'll run through all the key areas. So what I'm going to start off with, can you see my screen? Okay, just to check. Yeah, we're good. Okay, good. Fabulous. So I want to go through a real life scenario. So we're working with a new client that we just started speaking to. They're into Mercury. We've got a new vacancy with them. It's early days, and we've now got terms of business signed. So we want to start thinking about compliance already, but this compliance is more around the client side. What do we need to collect from the client? You know, terms of business wise. So what we would advise is that at this point, I can go into the related section of that client, always ignore the related common, come down to the related Mercury section. That is something we're tidying up, by the way. That'll be nice and clean soon. And we're going to go into the agreement section. So the first thing we want to focus on, yeah, big part of this training is agreements. Now, out of interest, we want to know how many of you already have created agreements, do create agreements. So we're going to pop up a little poll to find that out. Interested to know if you're using them at the moment. Let's have a little look at that in a moment. So while I wait for you to reply to that, if you could all respond, that would be super. What we're thinking about here is, again, new client and client-specific terms. Okay, so we're talking about an agreement. Now, you can create an agreement from the client. And the idea of that is a client-specific terms of business. Or in general, you can create agreements on the left-hand side in the menu. Okay, they don't have to always be connected to a client. Now, in this instance, we're going to go on to new agreement. Let's see how we're doing on our poll there. Okay, pretty good actually. So a lot of you, these are familiar to you, which is good. And then what you would do is you give that agreement an appropriate name. Now, when you think about that, you want to think about the consultant or the recruiter picking that agreement. Yeah, and they can choose that agreement out of a list of possibly many of those. So if we give it a name of the client name, and we've got contract business. Our first vacancy is a contract role. Okay, so because of that, we focused on contract terms of business. So I'm going to put in there contract. So it's very simple to see these are contract specific terms. And then I'll just put the word terms. Yeah, so we've got our client name, contract terms. Notice below that you've got job type. So relating to what I'm putting in my name, you can only create an agreement per job type. Yeah, so if it's contract agreed terms, you would create one for the contract. If you also were doing perm business with that client, then you would also create a second one for perm. Yeah, permanent agreement as well. And you can create as many agreements against that client as you need to. So we're going to stick with contract. Then the question here on an agreement is, are these terms specific terms with that client, or are they generic terms for your agency? So we know that these are client specific terms. Yeah, so you would pick client, but you can create terms that are generic. So we'll talk about that in a moment, but we can see here, can you see it's connected to our client because we created it from the client record. Then you can put in that you've agreed terms. Notice that that makes the date agreed field mandatory at this point. Then you say when you agreed the terms, and you can do effective from and to dates on here. Great if you want to review these terms, say after 6 months, after 1 year. So you can put the dates into here. Please note as well, if you put an effective to date in, if that date passes and you try and use that agreement, you won't be able to select it against a vacancy or a placement. Yeah, so that date, it can be moved on. You can review this and move the terms forward another year, but be wary of that effective to date. Or when I've done this once or twice, folks, if you put an effective from date and it's in the future and you go and try and select it, it won't be there until that date. Definitely done that before. You can put in a review date as well. Again, that's the date you want to review those terms. So you could build a view, effectively terms that are coming up in the next 3 months. Yeah, so you can keep control of that. You can then list payment terms in here with that client. And if you've got more than one accounting legal entity, you can then specify which one that's associated with. Okay. I'm not focusing on this today, but notice there is a financial section. We're more focused on compliance today, and we are doing, hopefully, some kind of finance webinar maybe coming up soon. But you can put in an agreement if you've agreed with all contract roles are going to be 15%. Yeah, so the margin's that, or the markup is X, or you've got a fee agreed on the perm side, you can enter that in. And that's one of the large, big benefits of the agreement as well. Okay. Now let's take that out for today. Let's not focus too much on that. If we then scroll up, we've got everything in we need. We can click save at the top. Standard with all things Mercury, as I'm sure you'll know. So created our agreement. Fab. Connected to our client. And we want to list what compliance or what we need to gather for that client. Okay. So if we go to the compliance tab, then you can click on add existing compliance here on the right hand side. It will ask you about cascading down. We can talk about that a bit later. But effectively, you would then pick the things that you will need. So if you think about client specific, we're thinking about things like, have we had a PO received? Yeah, so on that placement, I'll need to make sure we've got a PO. Also, one thing I was thinking of, let's have a little think, is potentially references. Yeah, so it might be you need to get a reference or 2 references when you place a candidate. Okay, so these are things that as the agency, you'll be collecting from that client or acting on behalf of the client. So if we then add those in, if you're thinking about the client compliance criteria, by the way, they can only be created by anyone that has system admin permissions. Okay, if you're system admin, you can go in and create the compliance in the system. Okay, so we've got our compliance in. We've created our agreement. So just to come back to generic agreements that are not client specific. Okay, so say, for example, say on all of your contract roles, you pretty much as standard need to always get a PO and always get a reference. So what you could do is create this agreement. You can not link it to the client. Yeah, if you do not associate it with a client in here, that means you can use that agreement against any client's placements or vacancies in the system. So you could create it once and keep using that same agreement over and over. Or you can choose to create them by client, and it's also helpful, of course, if you've got differences with those terms. Yeah, if there's something slightly different or unique, create client-specific ones. Okay. So I hope that's making sense so far. So we've got our agreement. Let's go back one. You can see now I've gone back and I'm in the client record again. Yeah, I can see the agreement here. It's agreed, it's contract. There we go, all done. Okay, so that's agreements. That's our first thing. Now we happen to be working on a vacancy, which happens to be a contract role, of course. We're doing contract business. And if we click into that vacancy, there we go. Let's see how we're doing. We happen to have a candidate who's got pretty far down the line. They've done really well. We've made an offer and they've accepted that offer. Okay, so what we're going to do now is create that placement in the system. I'm going to sneak in a bit of board view as we're here. Oh, doesn't it look good? So one of our new features, our board view in here, so we've got offer made, they've accepted the offer, happy with that. So we're just going to click on that and drag it into offer accepted. Then we can see the pay and the charge. Just double check that's correct. There may have been negotiations since you put that last in. Check the margin, of course. And then you'll notice there's a little tick box in here. This is saying I confirm that the financials are all correct. So it's down to the recruiter to check this and then confirm once they're happy. Okay. Fab. So it's just giving us a little note to say placement will be created in 2 minutes. We can see they've accepted the offer. We're going to go to placements in here. And in a moment, we'll have a placement. We'll give it a second. So I hope this has been helpful so far. The agreements are really powerful. Like I say, very client specific. And for those of you that have been using them, they used to be used for a combination of client and candidate compliance. But you'll see why I'm focusing just on client shortly when we get to worker types. Yeah, I'm on placement. There we go. Nice. So I'm going to click into the placement records. Now, one thing I should have shown you actually, just thinking about it, you can put that agreement against the vacancy record, or you can put the agreement against the placement record. Where it's beneficial to add it against the vacancy, one, we kind of think of it as best practice, so that when the placement's created, it automatically pulls into the placement. So you don't have to really think about it. So that's one benefit. Two, if you're putting in the financials that we saw on the agreement, you know, things like the margin or like the fee, then that's the massive benefit is it pulls it into the vacancy. The consultant doesn't have to remember what's the margin we've agreed with X client. You know, what's the fee that we have with X client? They put it in the agreement, or you do if you're building them. They just attach it, the terms come in, that margin or that markup, and then the consultant doesn't have to go and check manually those terms of business. That's when you'd want to add it against a vacancy. If you're never putting in kind of anything financial, or it just suits you better, you can just totally come into the placement and add the agreement at this point. Okay, that's what we're going to do. Notice it's showing me 3 different sets of agreement in here. So we've got our ones we just created and one that's standard. So the reason these are showing is because they have not been connected to a client. Yeah, they're generic agreements, which means I can use them against any client, as we mentioned before. So I'm going to pick those terms here. Let's pop those in, the ones we just created. Click save at the top. Look what's happened. I'm in that placement. I've got a mandatory field. Better get that filled in. So we're going to put the end date in of our placement. Fabulous. And then click save. And what's going to be happening at the moment is that PO and that reference is going to be moving from the agreement. It might take a moment into the compliance area. And it will either go in the compliance or the onboarding tab. We'll talk about that very soon, the differences between those. If you do want to push, by the way, this coming through, if you're impatient like me, you can click on a button on the ribbon called Sync Agreement at the top. So you can click on that. And what it does is it will just pull through those items a bit quicker. So you do have that option as well. But don't worry about those. We've got other exciting things to look at. We'll come back to those in a minute. So next thing is to think about is we're talking about worker types. So this is going to be about candidate specific compliance. Okay. See, I shouldn't have clicked that now. That's my impatience getting. Brilliant. Okay, there it did work though. See, worth it in the end. Okay, so if we go back to the front page in here, the basic info tab. If we now scroll down, this is a brand new area of Mercury. It's something called worker types, and it came out recently. You probably see one of Jackie's brilliant videos. You've got the V34 videos about worker types in the system. This is something brilliant. So what it's doing is it's saying, what is your primary worker type in here? So it's basically, if it's contract, think of it from a UK perspective for a moment. We could have a contractor that works for a limited company, has their own company, or they could go for an umbrella company. So depending on which they go through, yeah, they're going to want to have different documents or they'll have to provide different evidence. compliance-wise. Okay, this is what's brilliant. So in our placement, this particular worker is going through an umbrella company. So we're going to click into here. You'd have all your different worker types. So it could be things on the US side like W2, on the temp side, it could be 1099 on the contract side. So you would create the worker type. Yeah, what type of worker are they? And then you would select it. I will show you in a moment how it looks and how to build one, don't worry. But basically what that's also doing in line with the agreement at the same time, it's also pulling any now candidate specific compliance and just adding it into the same places. Yeah, so we've got the compliance from the client coming through if that's needed. And then we've got that specific worker types compliance coming through as well. Okay. Now let's save that for a moment. Getting excited now. I want to talk to you about additional worker types as well, but we'll get there in a moment. So if I actually click into the worker type record, there we go. Can you see on the left-hand side in the sitemap here, it's taken me from the recruit menu. That's what we're used to seeing, and it's taken us into the admin area. Now, everyone's got access to the admin area, so that is open to everyone. You'll notice we've now got a menu type called worker types, which is where we've gone into. When you come into worker type, you'll notice it's quite basic as a record. You just need to give it a name, which is the type of worker and what you'd want to select. So again, think of the consultant picking something. You want to make it nice and simple. Then you can give it a description if you'd like to. The code is totally optional. And then the most important bit, apart from the name, is adding that compliance in. Yeah, what do you need from someone that's a contractor that works for an umbrella company? Yeah, what documents do you need? Now, one thing to mention this part here, although you can all access the worker types, there is a permission associated with this particular button here, the add existing compliance. You must have the worker type permission associated with yourself to actually be able to add that particular compliance. And actually going back one to agreements, there are two permissions on agreements. There's a create permission and there's an update permission. And it's again, because it's so important, it's around terms of business, you'll probably want to be picking who's creating those in the business. Is it every recruiter? Is it going to be the compliance team? Will it be your managers? So you've just got to think about who you want to build these things in the system. If you are a large organization, you're thinking actually, you know, the consultants could create their own. There is an approval on the agreement. So you can set up an approval that someone creates the agreement and it goes to somebody for an approval step. So that can also be something you can consider as well. Anyway, let's get back to this fabulous thing. So if we look at here, we need a company certificate, we need a VAT certificate, a passport and a right to work. They're the things that I'll need from my candidate, okay, from the contractor. Fab. Now, if I go back to my placement for a moment, we've got a new role that we're working with, and that is a software trainer, okay? And with this particular role, it's a role where they need to have a certain level of qualifications, yeah, to be able to then work with this in this particular role. That was set with the client, okay? So if I'm doing a software trainer and I'm hiring a software trainer, I need to do certain things at that point. So this is where, can you see you've got additional worker types? So primary should always be, are they temp? Are they contract? What type of temp are they? What type of contract worker? But additional is brilliant for job specific compliance. So what do they need to do to be a plumber? If they're a supply teacher, what must they give you compliance wise before they can start? So whatever industry you're in, if you've got role specific compliance, this is for you. Yeah, the additional worker type. So I'm going to go into this and I'm going to go and add on here. But I don't actually have one for this. So I'm going to create a brand new one. See how it's got new here. Okay. So I'm going to click on to worker types. Give it a name. So software trainer. There we go. Oh, not softer. I didn't even notice what I was right, guys. Very sorry about that. Can't wait for that video to go around. Oh dear. Software trainer. There we go. That makes more sense. You could specify it's for contract or it's for temp, or you could say it's for all job types. There you go. Fab. And then if you click save, it's then going to create that. And then what you can do is then create that specific compliance criteria, add it to that particular worker type. So then if we go add on the side, there's a couple of things that we need. So one is more of an internal check. Have we assigned a laptop? Yeah, that's what we always do. We always give a laptop out for this particular role. And then we also want to make sure we collect it at the end. Okay. This is where we're going into different compliance types, which we'll touch on in a second. Then, I do have another one as well. So let's say that we also need them to have qualification in training. Yeah, so CIPD. So if we go and look for that, do we have that compliance type in here? No, we don't. Yeah, so in this case, the first time we've been hiring for this role, we're going to need to create a brand new compliance now. Okay. Fabulous. So I wanted to get into this a little bit so you understand the different compliance types. Hope I'm not going too quick for anyone. So we talked about, just to recap, yeah, we had agreements that's client. Then we talked about worker types that are candidate or role specific. We've gone in and started to create that software training worker type. And now we're going to add a new bit of compliance that we need for that particular role. Okay. So if we give it a name, so all we're going to call it is what we need, CIPD. There we go. Now, if you're working and you've got our candidate portal, our brilliant candidate portal, what you can do is set this up so that this will go over to the candidate portal. And the reason for the description is you can write in there to the candidate what you're expecting. So what evidence type, is it meant to have it has to be valid in the last 3 months, or there's certain rules around this. So add that in here. If you don't have the portal, they can just be internal notes. Absolutely fine. Then if we scroll down, what I really want to get into is, can you see here you've got, I'll come back to this one for a reason. Is it onboarding or is it offboarding? This is what I want you to think about. If we think back on the placement, right? Think about the compliance and the onboarding sub-tabs that we saw just now. So is something under compliance? Is it under onboarding? What is the difference? Okay. If you leave these as no, then it will go under the compliance tab as a compliance item. Okay. What that means is it's something that you definitely want to collect, right? Because that's why you're putting it there. But what it won't do is it won't affect the status of the placement. So if you do not collect that compliance, those compliance items, or you haven't ticked them off as valid, which we'll look at in a moment, it does not affect the status of the actual placement. So it will skip past it and it can still go live effectively. Okay. But if you say something's an onboarding item, we have a particular client status that is called awaiting onboarding. So if you're creating something as an onboarding item, it's attached to the placement. It will check, is everything completed? If it's not, and it's not all valid, it's not 100% complete, it will stay at that status. It will not go on to live. So if you think of it that way, think about things that you have to have before someone starts. You must see their passport. Yeah, you must see their qualifications. Do they have to do some kind of kind of course or something before they start? Do you need to give out equipment before they start? Those items should be onboarding. Yeah, because they must be done before day one. You don't want it to stop the client, the candidate from starting the role. Okay. Now we've got this awesome feature as well called offboarding, which is brilliant. Think at the end of a placement where you think, right, we need to collect this laptop, need to collect the hard hat, not the hard hat and the laptop. You probably won't have both. You might. And you basically at that point, what else do you need to do? Do you need to collect any certificates? Do you need to do any tax returns? Is there anything you need to do? You want all of that to be listed on the placement. You don't want an Excel spreadsheet separately, to tick that off. You just want it in the system, tick it all off as you go. So you can create things offboarding as well. They will only show on the placement when the placement has a status of ending soon. So as soon as it goes to ending soon, the offboarding will appear on the placement, and then you can start ticking that off, collecting things as you go. So I'm going to say mine's onboarding in this example. Now we'll come back to the top option. Jackie, I should get you to explain it. You explained it so well. So client specifiable, try saying that one, is it sounds like it's client specific compliance, but it's not what that's about. What it's about is, oh, Jackie, I do need you right now. Right, if you put yes on this, it means that the compliance will only go on the placement if it's attached to an agreement or a worker type. Yeah, so you attach it to one of those, it goes on the placement. Brilliant. If you put no, it will automatically go on to every placement. So you create a placement, it will already be there. Nothing to do with the agreement or the worker type, it's just to do with the placement creation. Great in some scenarios, but for everyone on this call, I'd imagine you've been working with Mercury for a while. What it also does is it puts it onto other existing placements. So not necessarily new ones after you create this, it will also put this on any existing placements that are active still in the system. Okay, so do be wary of that. So we recommend you leave this as yes, you create the compliance or onboarding, and then you basically attach it to one of the things we're showing you today. Then you've got full control over that. Okay.
Beautifully explained, Michelle. You didn't need me at all.
Nearly did, and then was like, I think I've got it. Thanks, though. Now you can also create in alliance with this compliance groups. You don't necessarily need to. It's a way of putting a parent group on different types of compliance. But what we're going to get into that's much more important is the type of compliance. So 95% of your compliance, I'm guessing, please tell me if I'm wrong here, I'm happy to be told I'm wrong, is usually evidence-based. So you're asking someone to provide you with evidence of X. Yeah, so this is the most common one that we're training. It's the most common reason people buy the portal. Yeah, so contractors can self-serve, upload their own compliance, their own evidence. But these three, we need to give these a shout out because evidence is expected, right? We expect you to be able to upload evidence. These are brilliant. These are really, really good for things that you want to tick off. So checkbox, you'll see these very soon. I'll show you rather than walk through them too much. It's easier visually. But checkbox is literally, have you done something? Yes or no? Yeah, you're just ticking it off. You've got text, you write a little bit of text. List, I'll show you a list. Okay, so these are really, really good, particularly for internal checks that you want to be doing. Have I received this? Have I got a copy of terms of business? Have I got a copy of this? You get the idea, folks. So then, if it's evidence-based, by the way, you can then tell the system you want the evidence, that document, linked back to what? Does it need to go back to the candidate record? Because it's candidate related. Do you want it to go against the placement? So an example of this is it's a PO, and you need to get a PO every time a placement's created. Yeah, so you want the item to be against the placement, not against the candidate as such. Candidate companies, brilliant there for limited companies. Okay. So that's that. And then, can you see here, you've got candidate visible. This is all about the portal. So I've got evidence that I'm creating. If we've got the portal and I send a login to the candidate, do I want them to see this listed if it's an item they've got on their placement? Yes or no? Because you may have evidence that's an internal check. Yeah, it might be something you don't want to send out to the candidate. Okay. So at the moment, I believe, Jackie, evidence and checkbox, we said, didn't we? Those two items both go through to the portal. The other two at the moment are inside Mercury.
Yeah, that's right. The
Yeah.
checkbox is a new one, and I think we're working on text next, but I don't know when that'll be available.
Brilliant. Thank you. And then extension rules. So extension rules, if you then create a second placement, do you want the values to consider, sorry, the compliance to continue as it is? So check the validity dates on there, bring it over to that extension. Do you want to have to collect that compliance for a second time? Because the extension's created, do you have to go and collect that again? That will be to do. Not applicable, hopefully speaks for itself. And then insert on original placement, it's a bizarre one. It's you do need this on the extension, but it adds it to the original placement rather than the extension placement. There we go. Beautiful. So I hope that helps people that haven't created compliance before that need to create the compliance. Okay. So if we save and close, there we go. Now I've got that selected. Can you see there? And then if I just add that, so they're the things that I need to collect for this type of job. Okay. So if we save and close that, Can you see again? It's selected that for me. There we go. How good's that? So we've got 3 different levels of compliance. You may not all need this. You may just need the worker type. Yeah, or you may need the worker type in the agreement. But if you do have a lot of role-specific compliance, this is really good for managing that as well. Okay. So if we go into compliance now, hopefully it's getting a bit busy in there. There we go. Fabulous. So see, we've got compliance. Now on each of these tabs, we've got, at the moment, it's non-compliant. And the percentage done is, we've got a bit of work to do. Nothing. Then we've got the same on onboarding. It's exactly the same. Yeah, so not complete, percentage complete. Now, just to remind you, this is the one that we must get to 100%. Not at this point at pending, we're at the very beginning of those statuses, but later, the final checkpoint after approval and after sending out any paperwork, if that's part of your process, it will then come and check this actual field and say, is this got 100% in it? And if not, it won't move forward. Okay. So we're going to update some of these. So let's look at, have we assigned our laptop? Now, hang on a minute. I want to point something out that's very important. Can you see under the evidence column? This is how you click it. Make sure you click into this particular column to access that bit of compliance. Now, if there's something, a hyperlink in the evidence column, it means it's an evidence-based compliance criteria. If it's not, it's one of the other 3. Okay. So if we go into passport, for example, here we go. So we've got compliance evidence, we've got confirmation status is outstanding, and it's currently invalid in the system. Okay. Now, when it comes to compliance statuses, on evidence, it's the only one that has 4 different statuses. If you think about compliance, it's either outstanding, it's been submitted by someone, either internally, you've uploaded it, or the candidate submitted it. And then you're either saying all's good, or it's not the right document. Okay, so compliance status wise, we've got 4 different statuses. And then it's either valid or invalid. Okay. So to add, if you're doing internal checks or you're helping out a candidate, scrolling down here, you would then upload the document down here on this little mini paperclip. Okay, so we're in the timeline area, click on the paperclip. And then add, note, and close at that point. Okay, so that's you actually uploading the compliance. Now, if we scroll to the top, it's still outstanding. There's no SharePoint file, but if we refresh, actually, let's try saving first and then refreshing. Okay. There we go. So what it does is, what it's taking is the document, it's putting it in the SharePoint location for that particular compliance. And you can see there's the location. And you can click on this icon and it will open up the document. So if one of you are, if say the consultants are uploading it themselves internally and you've got a compliance team, the consultants can upload. And then if you're part of the compliance team, you can come in, click on this button, check the document, and then you'll say if it's going to be checked or rejected. Okay. If we refresh again, yeah, there we go. That's what we want. Can you see? We've got checked and reject. This is a specific, again, permission. Yeah, not anyone can check and reject compliance, as I'm sure you'd be thinking the same, right? You wouldn't want everyone to do that unless you don't have a compliance team. The consultants manage the compliance themselves. They collect it, they upload it, and they tick it off. That's then fine to give them permissions for this. If you've got a compliance team, you'll want only those people and potential other managers to have that. So I'm going to say checked. This is so good because what it does is it puts in the date and the time and my name and makes it valid in one click. One click, folks. That's what we want. These valid from and to fields, by the way, should be open. Apologies, they're not in my system, but they will be open. So what you do want on a passport is a valid from and to date, right? Because then when it's expiring, you can build a report around expiring compliance based on that valid to date. Right, so that's that added, looking good. Let's save and close. So we're going to go back to compliance. Check this out. Looking better already. We're a 5th done. Fabulous. So that's our passport. Now, PO received, if we click into this one, always double click in that column. So we've looked at evidence-based compliance. This one is a text value. Notice it says done and it's got a lock. So until I go and put the PO number in, excuse my ignorance of PO number formats, then you put in a text value. Notice as soon as there's text in there, it unlocks that field. Okay. And then I can say, yep, I've got the PO number, all done. And with these ones, it's literally done or not done. Yep, because it's as simple as that. You've either put the text in or you haven't. You like those? Nice and easy. Fab. So we're getting there. Now, if we think about, let's go on to onboarding for a moment. Have I got my ID? I don't have a list one in here for you guys. I am sorry. I'll try and show you one in a moment. Let's try the reference. That's also a text value. 1 second. So there's one other I wanted to show you. Let's see if I can find it for you. That's my checkbox. It's my favorite one. Let's go back. So I reckon it's on this one here. There we go. A laptop assigned. Okay, so have I signed the laptop out? So if we double click into here, there we go. Checkbox. Yeah, so all you do is say, have I assigned the laptop? Yes, I have. That's all we've got to do. If you want to put any comments in, please do so, and then save and close. Fab. Okay, the only one I can't show today, which is unfortunate, is the list one. So with list, what would happen is you would click in like this. And then what it will do in this particular field here is it will be a drop down of options. Yeah, so basically it's really good for ID checks. So you might have collected a passport or you might have collected right to work, but what type of document was it? And you yourself as a system admin can create that list. Yeah, and then you can just pick from a drop down, pick the one it is, and that's the one that's been collected. Okay, so it's literally a list of options in there. I think that's everything. I thought we were going to be a bit longer, but we're actually on great timing. Yay. Okay.
Absolutely perfect timing, actually, Michelle. Well done. Yeah, I can't see any questions or comments in the chat,
okay.
But feel free to add those while I just show you. I've got one more slide to show you. Bear with me a second while I work out how to use PowerPoint. So yeah, while we're just waiting for that, I'll share this page and yeah, so I just wanted to let you know that we have recently given our community a little bit of a facelift, so it's now even better than ever. So if you're not already a member of the community, I can't pass up an opportunity to tell you that it's just the best place to go to if you want to find out information, stay up to date with the latest news, webinars, things like that, and collaborate with both members of Mercury and your peers within the recruitment industry. It's all free, and you can just contact Tony and he will set you up. I also wanted to let you know that we're running a series of webinars for new members of staff. It's completely free for you, and it's an essential webinar where Michelle again will go through the fundamentals of Mercury, and it's great if you've got a new member of staff or something. So that's all on our website and you can register for those. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.